Okay, so it's recording. Cool. Yeah, and then everybody, just so you know, if you're new here, I post the recordings at dillonfreed.com/recordings. So my meetups are typically I give a talk and then we do Q&A. That's the best way to do it. When I used to have, once you get past about 10 members, it's kind of difficult to do a meet and greet where everybody introduces themselves simply because it just, we have an hour and a half or so and it takes 30-40 minutes to do sometimes because, people start asking questions right away, which is totally fine, but it just eats up a lot of time when you start getting 20-30 people. So sadly, we won't be able to introduce ourselves. I will be doing in-person meetups. Those are great. I wish we could do it every one of these in person rather than Zoom, because then we can sit down, talk, and then you have time afterward if you want to mingle and socialize. And people sometimes bring food, and it's a fun time. So part of my room, I'm staying in an Airbnb right now, so I'm not in my typical abode. Cool. All right. I think that's about everybody. You all want to get started? We'll talk about the killer instinct and dealing with haters. It's a fun topic. I'm in NYC, Susan. Cool. All right. Um, who's in? Are a lot of people from NYC here? Or nearby New York? So, like the Letting Go groups, kind of It's throughout the U.S. We get a lot of people from the U.S. Um, Boston, Massachusetts, cool. New York. Yeah, so I'd like to travel to different cities and do them too. In person meetups. Okay, Massachusetts, Virginia. Did I see Toronto? The chat here. Virginia, Toronto, Florida. What's up, Florida? I go back and forth between NYC and West Palm Beach area. My mom lives there. Canada, awesome. I spent some time in Vancouver, like 6 months. Really loved it. All right, let's begin. So we're going to deal with haters, and I plan on doing a Killer Instinct meeting every month, and we're going to go through a bunch of different aspects of having a killer instinct mentality. And I'm going to share my screen here. So we'll go through the slides, and then we will. You can unmute yourself if you have a question to ask, but I'll try to go through this relatively quickly, and then we can just chat and talk about it, if that sounds good. Okay, so share screen. We'll do this tab. And I won't be able to see the chat, but I will come back to it. And can everybody see my screen? Okay, cool. Thanks, Rakesh. Thanks, Irma. Okay, so dealing with haters. About me, very briefly, I have a BA in psychology and MS in cognitive neuroscience. I am just finishing up my thesis there, so keep that in mind. It's not official yet, but I'm applying to PhD programs. For work, I own some businesses. I also teach neuroscience in college. I have programs as well, like How to Let Go, True Psychology, Come to Know Your Dark Side. And like I said, I initially, in my early 20s, my psychology programs were sort of sports based to begin with. I made Basketball Brain, Golf Mind. I made soccer programs, MMA programs, all dealing with getting in the zone and developing your killer instinct. So this is kind of my bread and butter. It's what I've done for 25 plus years now. And I used this sort of stuff when I was an athlete in high school. And so it kind of, this program, the Killer Instinct program, came about from a sports world. But then I applied it in a bunch of different areas of life, and it works really well for that too. It's really, developing your killer instinct is about being successful in the world, you could say, right? This is about being in the world and achieving what you wish to achieve, what you most want. I've worked with a bunch of professional athletes. None of them famous, but professional athletes nonetheless. A bunch of college athletes, a bunch of CEOs. So people found my program, then reached out to me, and I've worked with them one-on-one. And what we're going to go through in this group is what I talk to them about. Okay, so about the Killer Instinct Society, I didn't know what to call it. I didn't like workshop or group, so I'm calling it society. you can you can reject that if you want, but this is not like the 48 Laws of Power. If you know that book, this is not about manipulation. This is not win at any cost, right? This is not about exploiting people. It's simply about peak performance, and that means being a decent person too. We might use negative emotions here to enhance our performance, but again, we still want to be good people. That's kind of key for having a killer instinct. I don't want you to turn into, Tanya Harding or something, and and attack Nancy Kerrigan because you have the killer instinct. Okay, we're not gonna be those type of win at any cost people. That's not what the killer instinct's about. It's about maximizing who you are. It's about reaching living life at the highest level possible in every domain of life, or at least attempting to. You don't have to achieve anything. I think for me, you just have to be trying to be the best you can physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in your relationships, in your career. That to me is having the killer instinct. And sometimes I call people with the killer instinct rare species. I always love snow leopards. And I remember watching this documentary where these photographers had for years tried to capture a snow leopard hunting on video, and they finally did. I think in the mountains of Afghanistan or something. Like it was this thing that wildlife photographers, they could never find this snow leopard out on the prowl, and they finally did. And I think that's what it's like when you meet somebody who has a killer instinct, who is this rare species. Rare species are those individuals, those people that you don't see too often in life, but you hear about them, they exist at some level. Maybe you've met somebody who, you know, seems incredibly emotionally stable, happy, who is very good at their job, who has good relationships, who's in good shape. These people are rare, but they're not as rare as you would think. I've kind of come to the conclusion that they're about 1 in 10,000. I mean, that's very rare, but 1 in 10,000, something like that. Because every small town I visit, whenever it's like a population of around 10,000 people, I find that there's always one person in that town that everybody says, there's something about that's the wise person over. That's the wise woman over there, right? That's the person who kind of has it all together. That's the really unique, maybe a little eccentric, but like somebody you go to when you have a problem, somebody you go to when you need help, somebody who's kind of spiritually sophisticated, right? So I think it's like 1 in 10,000, maybe 1 in 5,000. Every small town seems to have one of these people as that is a rare species and has this what I call killer instinct in life. So again, the plan here is to talk about this killer instinct and do monthly lectures, and each week or month rather, we'll go deeper into the killer instinct mentality. And what we're going to start with is dealing with haters. Because what made me do this first is I have a friend who has some real haters, who's in the entertainment business, and they're acting and dancing, things like that, and there are people around them who just are trying to pull my friend down. And I said, well, hey, I've taught how to deal with haters for a very long time. And I've taught how to deal with haters for a very long time. So I'll make my first talk in the Killer Instinct Society will be on that, and I'll send it to this person. So that's why we're talking about haters today. Again, I typically teach about letting go of negative emotion. And quite frankly, I think this is the best way to deal with negative emotion. And when haters doubt us, when naysayers say we can't do something, we feel negative emotion, right? We're going to feel pride, anger. We'll talk about that more in a second. We're going to feel these negative emotions. And what I do typically is I let those go. And letting go of negative emotions means you ask for more of the emotion, which is counterintuitive. Now, I won't get into that here because this is what we talk about in the Letting Go program. I will tell you that at dillonfreed.com, you can get the Letting Go program 100% free. It's just sign up and you can do it. It's the full program. There's no like upsells or anything like that. And you can learn how to let go of negative emotion. But I also know from my days as an athlete, when I was in my early 20s, that you can also use negative emotion. Negative emotion is a power source. It's something that can motivate you. It can propel peak performance. You could say the Killer Instinct program, from a certain perspective, we're using our dark side, we're using our shadow. But again, I keep stressing this. We're not doing it in a narcissistic, manipulative, Machiavellian way. We're not exploiting people by doing this, right? That's not the point. If there are certain self-help programs that talk about like the killer instinct and the dark side, and you basically like whatever it takes to win, you do it. If you need to like destroy someone's reputation or life to get ahead, you can do that. If you need to lie to get ahead, who cares? Not what we're doing here. I don't think that's the killer instinct. I think that's just being an a-hole. It can be effective though, as we see a ton of a-holes throughout life, find success, but are they truly successful, right? Truly successful means, I think, also having a good moral character. So who are our haters? What are haters? Well, they're people who doubt your dreams, people who doubt you, your capabilities, your abilities, people who make snide comments, passive aggressive people, right? A lot of passive aggressive people in the world. My God. People who want you to fail, who get off on seeing others fall. They like live in a constant state of Schadenfreude. They do nothing with their own lives. They want to see other people fall down so they feel taller because, they don't have much stature. The only way they can have any sort of stature is to watch other people crumble. The media is terrible. They very often are haters. Strangers can be haters. Friends, family, lovers can be haters. That's the hard part. When somebody close to you that is doubting you, and you have a family member there's somebody in my family. It's kind of humorous because he's like this. He's not a nasty person, but we call him the dream killer, right? Like you bring him a dream, he's going to tell you every way it will not work. Like, why bother? What's the point? We call him the dream killer, but he's a good source of fuel. He's a great hater. But even if you prove him wrong, he's one of those people who's just like, oh, you got lucky. Doesn't do anything. Online, you're going to get hate. You post anything online, you're going to get hate for sure. You're going to get people to say you're crazy, you're wrong, you're stupid. Why are you doing it? So the good news is, in this environment with social media and everything, we have an abundance of haters, and that's great, and from a certain perspective, because that means we have an abundance of fuel sources. It's like haters are essentially catalysts, and if you know how to use that catalyst, that energy source, then it's very good for you. And I should also mention, we're not going to go too much into this today, but you also have your own inner hater. You have hater inside, and sometimes it's fun to prove yourself wrong, right? Like, okay, part of me saying that inner hater saying you can't do this, and you can say I'm going to show my own inner hater that I can. So you have an inner hater that's that is active as well. So essentially, what do we do about these haters? How do we handle haters? And really, I could add a few more, but I think there's two main categories in dealing with haters. And one is we can use their energy or we can ignore them. And we need to find tactics for each of these. If we're going to use haters as a fuel/energy source, we need to understand that right away, it's not the cleanest burning fuel. If you run constantly on hater energy, people saying you can't do something, and you use
After our
the
next cross-country storm, the atmospheric river moving together.
When you use this energy, it can like kind of dirty your soul if you use it all the time, right? If you run too much on this energy, you will also probably burn out and be miserable in your life. Like, have you ever been around somebody their whole life is about like getting even, proving others wrong? It's not a healthy energy. You'll lose your passion if you constantly rely on hater energy. And it might not always be constant. Maybe there's not haters around you, right? So you can't get your energy source. But they are good they are good to have around when you find haters. When you find haters, they can help focus your attention. They can help you overcome procrastination, which we'll talk about in a second. We'll talk about the ratio as well, of like how much of this hater energy should we use compared to how much should we be motivated by our own internal joy for our career or passion for what we do. But haters, the reason I love haters is because this energy source, if you take a little bit of it, it intensifies focus. It's like it gives you a boost of energy. And I always think of ADHD. People with ADHD, it seems counterintuitive, but they're actually given a stimulant when you have ADHD. Now, why do they do that? A stimulant actually activates the prefrontal cortex and it helps you focus. So haters give you that sort of energy as well. If you take the hater energy, the emotions the haters generate within you, it actually helps you focus. It helps you concentrate. It helps you get up early. It helps you stay up late. But you have to take haters' energy in small doses. You can't OD on it. You can't you can't allow the hate to overtake you. Okay, so it's something I've told athletes forever. The haters' energy is an energy you sip but don't chug. So when you feel like you want to get even with somebody, you feel that energy. Somebody said you can't do something, you're delusional. That feeling you feel of wanting to get even, you can't just take it and guzzle it, like shotgun a beer can with it. You just want to take a little straw and take a sip of it. Okay. And if you're a sports fan, you can see what happens when people take taunting, trash talking, haters' energy. If they take too much of it in, you can snap. You become somebody like Draymond Green, who's a basketball player, or Dennis Rodman. Like, if you take too much of the hater energy in, it interferes, it impacts your performance, it creates a worse performance. And again, you end up burning out. But this hater energy, along with focus, it does help you overcome procrastination. For me, I think of
So
it
can
almost
you
like an
just
alarm
put
clock.
the previous slide up for like 20 seconds? I was just looking at it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just heard something about what you're saying earlier today, and that it was related more to meals and food. But anyway, it's because I can see the the connection. It's because, and they were saying just take some sips of water after this and that, and the connection is because if you take too much, whatever, it's toxic.
That's right. That's right. 100%. Yeah, they say the poison is in the dose, right? Like if you take too much of anything, it'll hurt you in some way. But especially this, because we are dealing with emotions that, generally speaking, are negative, right? When you think about what you feel when a hater says something, it's pride, anger. We're going to talk about this again, but like sort of lower emotions, but so they're kind of dirty emotions, but they do have energy potential in them. But yeah, you have to sip it. If you don't sip it, if you if you take too much of it, I've seen too many people. I always use the example of Tanya Harding. You probably the ice skater, right? Like wanted to win so bad that it just overcame her. The negative emotions, the pride, the graspiness for success, right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to become those people. But great connection that you made. So yeah, I think it helps us focus, and then this energy also helps us overcome procrastination. Haters can make you work. It's like it's an amphetamine to a certain extent. It'll get you up early, keep you up late, but again, not the healthiest emotion. Take it in small doses. They'll make you work harder, work more than usual, work a little longer than usual. So when I worked with athletes when I was younger, they'd be in a workout and we'd talk about using hate or energy. And I always said at the end of your workouts, that's when you really want to start thinking about those haters when you're tired. So they're doing like a bench press, or they're working on their basketball game and getting shots up to practice. And I said at the end, normally you'd only do 4 reps. That's what's on your chart. That's what your routine says. Your last set is 4 reps. And well, what if you think about your hater in that moment? And every time they'd come back to me and said, I'd shot my 500 shots for the day, and then I thought about my hater, and I shot another 100. Or I did 4 reps, and then I did one more set of 4 reps. Okay, so it can make you work harder than usual, longer than usual. There's a little bit of paranoia in it, in the sense that, like, what if they're right? Because there's a little voice in you, it's like, what if the hater's right? Now you can let that take you over, and you become depressed, and you don't try, or that you want to shut that voice up and you want to make sure that they're not right, that they will not be right. You won't let them be right about you, right? So it makes you take an honest assessment of yourself, because if you really want to prove the hater wrong, maybe there's something that they said that's actually a little bit true. But see, they look at, maybe they say you lack a certain capability or something, and there's truth in that. But see, they see it as that's who you are. It's an unchanging fact about you. right? Like maybe you're not very good at your passion right now, and they're pointing that out, and they say, well, that's who you are. You'll never get better. But you know that you can improve. So while they're right, they don't see your potential. And as we talked about, the emotions that typically are produced by haters within you are anger, and it's a feeling of how dare they say that about me? You know, where do they get off smashing my dreams or saying this about who I am? So there's anger there. There's fear. Again, maybe they're right. Maybe they said something that maybe my dreams aren't going to pan out. There's pride. I can't let them be right, right? And that's really kind of a source of using the hater's energy. And then there's that I'll show them. And that's where you get I'll show them. When you hear somebody say that, right? And they say it with a certain tone of voice and a certain facial expression, you know what they're going to do. Especially like great people. Like great people, people who've done this before, when they say I'll show them, like you know what's about to happen. When I was younger, you'd watch Michael Jordan and somebody would say something crazy about him, right? Like, oh, well, he can't he's getting a little older and he's lost a step, and you just go, oh, you know what's going to happen, because you could see a look in Jordan's eye like, I'll show them. And there's a famous rap verse that goes, there's no signs of anger or fear because you're the one in danger. And there's something about people who get really good about using haters' energy where it's just like this look on their face, like you just set into motion something that's going to destroy you and energize me. So we use these negative emotions to motivate us, to energize us, to help us concentrate, to help us focus. And we might constantly start recalling what the hater said. We think about it, we marinate on it, and we use it to motivate performance. But the main fuels in our life, we're using this hater energy as like we're sipping it. The main fuel always has to be our love of what we do and our vision for the future. So we, generally speaking, the highest octane, the cleanest burning fuel, the electrical car of our of our life is the joy in what we do. So when you have a joy and a passion for what you do, and then you add a little bit of the hater juice, it's fantastic. It intensifies performance. So I'd say 97 to 99% of the reason you're doing what you're doing is because you love it. And then like 1 to 3% because you want to shut up your mother or father-in-law who made a snide comment, right? Like, and I always think of Fast and Furious, the movie, the race car movie, and they always, they have these super souped up cars, and I look at that as your love and your passion, right? They already have these great cars; they're super fast, but they have that button they can hit that like gives them a boost. So I think of the haters in our life as the nitrous oxide switch, a little injection that makes the engine go faster, right? But you can't run your car in that forever because the engine will blow out. So you soup up the car with loving what you do, having excitement. Excitement's my favorite emotion. You have excitement about what you do. But then you can also have that. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'll show you, mother effers, right? That's that little nitrous oxide switch. So one thing you can do, how do we start to use this? We make fuel lists. We make lists of people who've said things. When I was younger, somebody told me that I lived in a fantasy world after I shared one of my dreams with them. And somebody told me one of my business ideas was a BS idea, right? So my screensaver was was a list of things people had said about me that doubted me. And quite frankly, sometimes I'd hallucinate haters saying things about me. I would assume they were thinking that. So if there's no haters in your life, just pretend there are. This is something Michael Jordan used to do. He'd pretend that somebody had talked trash about him who hadn't said a word, because he knew he needed that 3% of juice sometimes to help his focus, to help him wake up and work hard. He loved the game. He wrote a book called For the Love of the Game. He really loved basketball, but he also knew he needed that hater energy. And wherever he could find it, he would try to get it. Now, I tried to take this approach sort of humorously instead of having a sense of vengeance, right? It's just kind of like, oh yeah, I'll show you, right? And so I do it more. The other thing about like hater energy is you do it more out of like self-respect than trying to get revenge over somebody. The I'll show them is actually, I'm going to prove to myself that I can do this. And yes, prove to the world, right? And there's also the fear that if I don't succeed, I might prove them right. I don't want to do that. I don't want to prove haters, naysayers right. There are famous examples of people who have used haters' energy to propel themselves forward. Kobe Bryant in high school had a list, literally a list he carried with him of all the players who were ranked above him. And whenever he played them and outplayed them, he'd mark them off the list. We've talked about Jordan. Will Smith was rejected by a girl in high school, and he decided in that moment he would never let that happen again. Tom Brady remembered every quarterback drafted above him, and he looked at it as being snubbed. And he said his entire career was essentially proving everybody who doubted him wrong. He was drafted in like the 6th round. Usain Bolt, the sprinter, said, "I was told I'd never be great at 100 meters, and I worked to prove them wrong." Elon Musk, critics laughed at Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal, but he used that as energy to turn them into giants. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. He returned years later, revolutionized the technology. He really was motivated by proving the board who had fired him wrong. Jeff Bezos, people laughed at Amazon when it first started because it was only an online bookstore. But he said, when you get criticized, you should listen to it because, like we said, there might be some truth in their criticism, right? Haters might be pointing out a deficiency you have, but you can improve upon that deficiency. But Bezos said, but it should also be fuel to prove them wrong. Disney, he was told he lacked imagination, and of course now he built Disney. Oprah was told she was unfit for television, and she said, that actually motivated her to prove she wasn't. J.K. Rowling was rejected by publishers. The Beatles were told guitar bands were on the way out, and that made them work even harder. Elvis was told to go be a truck driver, again, to give up singing, and that made him want it even more. Rocky, same thing, rejected over 1,500 times pitching Rocky. Harrison Ford was told he'd never make it in Hollywood. He said this was a major motivation for him. Meryl Streep said she was told she was too ugly, and she said that just made me more determined. Jim Carrey was living in a van, and he said he would sit in his car and he would dream about proving everyone wrong who said he couldn't make it. So it's a classic method to develop your killer instinct, right? It's a classic method to get peak performance out of yourself. So aside from making the fuel list, what you also want to do is visualize the moment that you will prove your haters wrong. Take a few minutes every morning and get excited about that moment where somebody said you couldn't get a book published, and get excited about seeing yourself in the bookstore taking it off the bookshelf or seeing it on Amazon.com on Kindle. You visualize that moment, you feel excited about it, and you can see your haters' face, right? You can see them go, maybe they finally admit defeat and they clap for you, like at the end of movies, right? It's a motif in movies where the person who's doubted the hero the entire movie, the hero succeeds, and then you got to pan to the doubter, to the hater, and they finally start clapping, right? So you can visualize that moment, but don't just visualize the end. Also visualize yourself working to that moment as well. Visualize the hard work that's going to have to go into this. And remember, the mind loves images, it loves movies, it loves stories. So tell stories with pictures in your mind. And the rules for visualizing are: make it real. Try to use all your senses. So when you visualize yourself getting that book published or opening your business, mentally be inside of that visualizations, right? So you can feel the texture of the book. Maybe you can even smell the book. Okay, so you want to make it real, and then see it be inside your own body as you do this, right? So you're feeling the book, and then stand outside of your body and do it like you're watching yourself on stage. The brain likes this from the first and third person. Make sure you feel the emotions. This is key. The emotions of triumph, the emotions of joy that you've done this, and the emotions of I proved them wrong. And you don't have to do like a full long movie. You can just do GIFs. Like typically when I visualize, I'll just have like a peak moment visualized, a key peak moment that's visualized. And I just repeat it over and over again like a GIF that just kind of loops. So you see yourself holding the book, right, in the bookstore, and maybe you're signing books. There might be a few different GIFs. It doesn't have to be like one long movie, right? It can just be little clips, little highlights, so to speak. But visualizing that, and visualizing, your hater's face, even just having the face of the hater or the feeling of what they said, right? Feel that energizes, and then visualize your triumph over it. Now, we've talked about using this energy for haters, but you can, of course, also just ignore haters. You don't have to use their hate. You can simply block it out, ignore it, or let it go. But if you're going to do that, you need tools to do it. One method I've taught athletes forever, they're going to perform, they're on, like a big stage. There's people in the crowd, there's scouts in the crowd, there's media in the crowd, and there's haters in the crowd. And one tool I tell them is stop caring what other people's neurons are doing, right? So other people's neurons are firing, they're thinking thoughts. And if you think about when you drive through a neighborhood where there's strangers, right? Where there's strangers everywhere, you don't really care what's going on in their house. If you see lights on in a house, you don't know the people, you don't care what's happening, right? So one method is to just not care what people's thoughts are. Like, yeah, their lights are on in their face, you see they're conscious, like, but who cares what their brain's doing? There's a famous quote that what other people think of me is none of my business. And that's kind of the thought here. People's thoughts are like lights on in a stranger's house. Another method is we used with athletes, I use this with people who are giving speeches, literally pretend you're in a bubble. And once you're in that bubble, like a clear bubble, like a soap bubble, nothing can come inside. Nobody else's thoughts can come in. What other people think about you, they hate you, if they don't like you, if they think you're a moron, just exist inside a bubble. Just create a bubble and nothing can come inside. Inside that bubble, you're confident, you're calm, and you're composed. So we use the bubble method a lot with athletes. I first developed the bubble method when I was actually went golfing with some really good golfers, and I had just started, and I noticed I was thinking about what they were thinking about me, or trying. I'm like, oh, they must think I really suck. And I said, you know what? Let's use the mental training I have. And I just imagined I was in a bubble, and their thoughts could not get in. Whatever they thought about me, I was in a bubble. I was in my own world. It's another way to put it. So the bubble method can help you ignore haters if you want to ignore haters. You can also let go of haters. We won't get into letting go here because, again, I teach at the full program at dillonfree.com. It's totally free, 100% free, full program. There's no upsells or anything like that. But I just want more people to learn how to let go. Letting go of haters essentially means, counterintuitively, you feel the hater's energy, you let it all come up, you let your own inner doubt come up, you let it all come up, and you let it go. So it's not blocking out. You're actually going into the energy of the haters and asking for more of it until it runs out. And I'll wrap up the presentation with this poem because it's one of my favorite poems, and I think it's perfect for dealing with haters. In the end, the hater energy has to put you to work, right? It has to make you work harder. That's the whole point. It's going to make you work harder, and it can help you get closer to achieving your dreams. So this poem is called "The Spirit of Buffalo County." It's a terrible name for a poem, but it's a good poem. It goes, somebody said that it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with the trace of a grin on his face. If he worried, he hid it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody scoffed, "Oh, you'll never do that. At least no one ever has done it." But he took off his coat and he took off his hat, and the first thing we knew, he'd begun it. With a lift of his chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubting or quit it, he started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. This is my favorite. The ending's my favorite. There are thousands to tell you it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesize failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. But just buckle in with a bit of a grin. Just take off your coat and go to it. Just start to sing as you tackle the thing that cannot be done, and you'll do it. So that's the presentation. I got this quote. I think Ronaldo is accredited to saying this, but it says, "Your love makes me strong. Your hate makes me unstoppable." I thought that was a good quote to end on. So we'll have a discussion now. I'll stop sharing. Okay. Is my screen back? Am I back? Ada, I see your hand is up. I see. We'll do.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that.
Of course.
Those helpful, can definitely Yeah, haters everywhere. I can understand your friend.
Everywhere. It's a plague upon society.
Yeah. Anyway, so my question is, okay, so yeah, that's great. Utilizing in the way you mentioned, but I'm just even
Point
thinking
out
back
is,
to,
oh, sorry.
huh? But I'm thinking back to, like, earlier times or whatever, and I'm thinking, like, what about, like, not necessarily that I'm there now, but I'm just asking, like, what about, like, when you get that hater energy, and about, but when it doesn't, like, or I know you're telling us this is what to do, but, like, what about when it doesn't, you may not instinctively or naturally take it that way. It's supposed to, it might make you feel down, it might make you feel
Mm.
terrible, it might make you, some people might, if they're constantly, let's say on the job, it might make them start to feel kind of depressed or defeated. Can you talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah, for sure. And I actually was going to put a section in on just that, but I thought that's more in tune with the letting go aspect of it. So, what I would recommend is you need to go into those doubts. You don't want to try to overpower those inner doubts you have with like an internal dialogue. You don't want to look in the mirror and say, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. I'm not saying that's bad to do, but what you want to do is you want to go into those doubts and let them go. So, in the letting go program, we talk about, I'll give you an example that's slightly related to what we're talking about here. I was just working with somebody who had a humiliating experience, right? Like they did something they were taken advantage of. I don't want to say boneheaded. They were taken advantage of, and they thought they shouldn't have been so gullible, and they felt humiliated. And he would feel humiliation, then he tried to talk himself out of it. He would say, "Oh, things happen, blah blah blah." That was all true. What we did to help him get over this, which was really killing him, was we had him go into the emotion and point out like you don't feel humiliated enough, right? Like, which again, I'm giving a crash course here, so it's going to sound crazy, but like, no, you need to feel like you're worthless. You need to feel like, yeah, of course this happened to you because you're stupid. You have a low IQ. Like all the things he was feeling humiliation, but under that, there were a bunch of deeper feelings that he wasn't feeling. It wasn't that he was just humiliated. He felt like a complete and total loser, like he lost his manhood because men shouldn't be taken advantage of like that. He's from a different culture, right? So who cares? Like for him, this is real, right? That's his emotion. So we had to go into that. Like my wife's not going to look at me the same way, blah blah blah, because it had to deal with money. He lost a lot of money. He had to go deep into that. He let it all come up, and it's like it almost, part of my language, but vomits out. And you let that all come up, and then it disappears if you do it in the right way. There's a way to do it in which you let all of that come up and it disappears. So if you're dealing with people who are constantly putting you down and then you start to doubt yourself, you start to feel depressed about this, I would highly recommend learning to let go of all of that depression and then try to hold on to a little bit of the anger you feel. So we get rid of the emotions that make you want to curl up in a ball and quit. We let go of those, but then we consciously decide to hold on to the anger, the little bit of pride we feel, and then we use that. So you let go of the emotions that make you curl up into the fetal position, and we finesse the negative emotions to power us, to focus us, right? My method, typically what I do now, when I was younger, I would just use that negative emotion, and you kind of get this little like, oh yeah, like I just refuse to be depressed. I'm going to let this piss me off to power me. That's another thing you can do. Just say, you know what, f that. I'm not going to deal with the doubt and the downness. Just no. I'm picking. If I have to choose between feeling depressed about these haters or letting it power me, I'm choosing to let it power me. So you can also do that. It's just kind of like a conscious choice to switch between the two. But really good question. I was going to do a section on that, but I think maybe I'll add it next time we talk about haters and doubters. Great question. I hope that helps. Does anybody else have any other ways they deal with it? By the way, that's what I should ask. Does anybody else have any ways they deal with haters and doubters that could help the group? This is what I found that works. Use it or ignore it is the best advice, I think. I will say one of the hardest things actually, is when it's a family member or friend. That makes it hard. But when they're not doing it maliciously, it's because they just care about you, right? And they're worried that you're going to get embarrassed or not reach your goal, or they really truly think you're wasting your time. Are they haters, right? Or are they just concerned citizens? I would say I would use it as hate, even if they're not. I wouldn't let it impact my my relationship with them. No problem. You got to go. You look for distractions. So you kind of, Patrick, you're kind of in the ignore it camp. Cool. Ava or Eva, I see your hand up.
Hi there. Can
Cool.
you hear me okay?
I can. Cool profile pic.
Oh,
It's
thank
cute.
you. It's a hedgehog. It's my spirit animal.
So beautiful.
It is, right? It's warm and
Yeah.
fuzzy. Sort of just jumping off of what you were talking about just right now, and without getting into it. You talked about when friends or family members do it to you, and I agree. I've had that experience. It's difficult to navigate. But what about when you get into another arena, which is basically it winds up being a form of bullying because the person is has some sort of, like, say, some sort of power over you in the workplace. They could be a supervisor, they could be a colleague with more experience, they could be someone who has the ability to, if they don't work with you, they can really mess you up.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to deal with them. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to interact with them. How about, can you talk about that? I mean, I know that's not an easy problem to solve, but
Yeah. Well, my advice would be is like you obviously I tend to go to the emotional aspect of it. Right? That's kind of my thing. You go to the emotional aspect because you're going to feel probably a lot of animosity towards this person, right?
right?
So what you want to get that animosity out of your system. So you want to let it go. And maybe hold on to a little bit of it as we're talking about here to power whatever action you're going to take. But the main reason you want to let go of the animosity is because then you can think clearly. Then you can think rationally. Have you ever been in an argument and you're so mad that you can't even like get the words out, or you don't, maybe you're being professional at work, but you're so mad you're not thinking clearly. The
Yep.
emotions interfering with your,
Yep.
and you're a very sharp person. You're usually quick on your feet, but you're just like, so 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 you learn to let go of emotion because the emotions can distract you. When you let go of the negative emotions, like you're at home right in the morning and you picture keying your boss's car, like all the cursing him out, making a big scene, like in the Show Me the Money movie. I can't remember the name of it right now. But you carrying out the goldfish bowl. You visualize all these revenge fantasies. You get it out of your system, right, so to speak. And then once that's out of your system, when the moment comes where you need to be quick on your feet and have a good response, you're able to do that more. You're able to do that, and then you can also start to see options that you won't see when the negative emotion dominates you. So the anger you feel, the resentment, the kind of unfairness of it to have such a terrible person as a boss or an employer or somebody who has power over you. When you let go of that and you can think clearly, you start to see more options that you didn't see before. Bruce Lee said, anger blinds, right? Well, any negative emotion blinds us. It shrinks our vision as to what's possible. You won't see or notice maybe a job you could switch to or another part of the company you could switch to. Right? You won't see your options. So letting go of the emotion is, I think, paramount. And then maybe keeping a little bit of that animosity you feel, holding on to a little bit of it consciously so you can use it as the hater juice. Sip your hater juice, just to give you a little buzz. But that's what I would do, right? Because every situation is different. But I know if you're think about any time you've been embarrassed in the past, or things haven't gone you didn't act in the way you wanted, or you couldn't express yourself. It's usually latent anger that interfered. If I think back when I've lost my temper, every time I cringe and I'm like, how could I have been? It's my anger always was ratcheted up too much, right? It was just ratcheted up, my resentment for somebody. So you let that go, and then you can think more clearly and whatever industry you're in, you can just maybe see options that you can't see when you're holding all of that negative emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. It's something to think about anyway. I like the the process that you outlined in your letting go workshop, and I think that could be an appropriate thing to practice or learn more about.
Cool. Yeah, for me, that's my main method, right? Like that's what I do. I would let it go. I would go through all what the unconscious wants to do in these situations. The unconscious is very simple. It wants to obliterate the threat, escape the threat, or play dead. That's it. So what people will do in these situations is some people do whatever they can to get that boss fired, right? Like to eliminate the threat. Some people will run from the threat. They will just leave the job. They'll just quit. And then some people are going to sulk. It's kind of like depression curling up in a ball. And hopefully somebody else will see you sulking, come in and ask what's wrong. And then the higher management's involved. But the unconscious, like if you go deeper than that, it gets extreme. You might want to be physically violent with your boss. And you don't want to acknowledge that because then you feel like a bad person. So now you have to deal with the guilt of the fact that you would love to slap your boss across the face, right? Or whatever. Like there's can be violent, or you want to curse them out. It's like you really want to rip them a new one.
Mm-hmm.
So verbally, you want to be violent, and you're going to feel guilty about that because you're a good person who reads spiritual literature, and like you're trying to be a nice, kind human being, and on the inside, you're this vicious animal who wants to. And then you're going to consciously, the other thing people try to do is they like try to consciously reframe it, take the position of the boss. They have this big workload and they're stressed too. And that only works for a few minutes. And then you're right back to the emotions of like wanting
Can I
to
just
vengeance.
say that I've done that and I agree that because you're making excuses for the behavior, really.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And you're blocking out the emotions you actually feel. So I like reframing and even meditating. I'm a big fan of meditation. I'm not putting it down, but like if you realize the reframing you do, all you're actually doing is pushing out the emotions. You're pushing them down into the unconscious, and they're gonna come roaring back out.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, it just you're building up kind of a toxic emotional environment.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Of course, great question. Vera, I think I saw you had your hand up. If you had a question.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So
Hello.
I wanted to talk a little bit about. Sorry, I need to drink something real quick.
No, yeah, go ahead. Take your time.
So, kind of about letting it go. I reached some successes in my life, and by nature, I'm kind of peaceful. And I guess my nature is letting it go. But recently, I kind of started noticing, and maybe again watching movies, etc., I feel that I may look weak by letting it go, by not responding, by not responding right away. And that's why I feel like, wait a minute, I feel like I need I need to work on my killer instinct. I started feeling it more and more. It's not about kind of building up success that I need like to fuel on haters' energy, but rather like confidence, right? Project confidence that nobody can attack you easily. Like I'm thinking about killer instinct from this perspective.
Yeah, so that's absolutely part of the killer instinct. And there are beliefs that can go along with the killer instinct. So we talked a lot about emotion. But like I think it's good to let go of a lot of the negative emotion, but to hold on to a little of the negative emotion, but then to add some beliefs to that. And the beliefs can be something like no one takes advantage of me, nobody walks all over me. Right? So being somebody who is very peaceful as you are, peace doesn't always mean that you have to bend. You can be yang too, right? So you sound like a very yin person, very passive. But remember, you have the ability to activate yang. So it's like the black dot in the white of the yin and yang, right? And essentially what I would do is like when you're feeling like somebody's taking advantage of you, you're mostly yin, just see your consciousness kind of transport itself to that black dot where it's strong, where it's yang like. Yang meaning more aggressive, more quote unquote masculine in traditional, literature. That's how they describe it, right? It's more rigid. I'm not going to move. So my mother is an extremely peaceful person. My mom's one of those moms where every other kid is like, your mom's a saint. She's one of those very nice people. But I've seen people try to mess with kids around her, right? Like be rude to a kid or something. And that yin suddenly becomes yang very quick. And you can't mess with her. So I think a good way to approach it is kind of that the maternal instinct is a great example of being peaceful, a peaceful person, but by no means weak, right? Where if it's kind of the mama bear thing, I'm cool, I'm cool, I'm cool, I'm cool, I'm cool. Then somebody messes with you, you activate that inner warrior within you, that inner I'm not taking SHIT off nobody within you, right? So that can be that's also part of being a good person too, is not to be taken advantage of, not to be exploited. And if you release deep enough, you'll find that you're a very peaceful person. Very few things ruffle you. But if you need to be firm, you are firm, right? Like I run companies and I never do it with malicious intent or animosity, but like sometimes you need to say something. This needs to be done by 5 o'clock. No discussion, right? So you got to like stiffen up. They know you're a nice person. But it's like, no, here's a deadline, get it done. And you can do that. So does that make sense?
Yes, that's helpful.
It's a great question though. Yeah. Because I've battled with that because I'm trying to be a good person. And sometimes when I was younger, it's very easy for me to switch into kind of being mean and rude when I was younger, right? I didn't want to be that way. So I had this tension where I didn't want to be weak, but I also didn't want to be an asshole. So, but over time, I think you find the
Yes.
balance.
Yeah, and actually somebody gave me a tip how to be fast on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Is basically kind of be prepared. Let's say if you know your haters, let's say your enemies, people who may attack you, like basically be prepared or have some sort of things that you can tell them, like prepare some things in advance in your head, like what you may respond to them. That kind of works for me. So that's interesting. So and so basically when you respond, it's not trash talking, but kind of prepared answer,
Right.
like which sort of makes you again look sharp, and yet you respond back, and yet you are not trashy. That's
right. Very good advice. I completely agree. Like really good debaters, they have their lines, their go-to lines, right? Like it's kind of like a lawyer. You know your haters, generally what they're going to say, and you already have your responses ready, So you're kind of like an attorney. And that is awesome advice. I used to be a debater and I would debate politics all the time. And you want to know what they're going to say and have your responses at the ready. Now, you also want the ability to, now you're calm, right? Because you have your responses ready. Now that you're calm, you can also be spontaneous. When you're calm, you'll find you're a little quicker if you just want to be spontaneous too. So that is excellent advice if you want to throw a zinger at a hater. But good advice. But yeah, I think all of us, most of the people in this group are people who are trying to be like good, decent, loving people, right? Everybody in my group usually has a spiritual orientation, self-improvement orientation, and they don't want to be jerks. But there's that tension between being peaceful and calm and then feeling like you're being taken advantage of, right? And we don't want that feeling either. Ada, I see your hands up.
Yeah, good discussions with everyone. I don't know, this is not my question, but I just have to say what just came to my mind, like when just hearing everyone talk is like, just like kind of like whether it's kind of like allowing because I remember a time too, what you were saying, Dylan, about like where, it's like, yeah, it's like sometimes he's like, how stuff, way back, how things might come out. It's like, I don't want to come out too strong. Sometimes it may not come out right. And then so it's like, then I may not really, say, but that wasn't ideal either. So I I'm thinking what kind of came to my mind is just that kind of things have to flow. I'm not saying this is an answer. I'm just saying a visual, just like kind of it's kind of just a kind of like how that like mind like water or whatever, just kind of like a flowing emotion. It can't stay stagnant. It can't stay, just be still. It's better for it to flow. That is something that came to my mind.
For sure. I think essentially, and this relates to a question Patrick just asked in chat, went directly to me. What's the difference between pushing out emotions and letting them go? So like, yeah, you can't let but that's what most people do. They let the emotions stagnate. Like underneath your consciousness in most people's a cesspool. It's just a cesspool of fears, worries, anxieties, angers, everything, like so much unresolved emotion. Right. So you have to you can't bottle it up because that deforms you, that distorts you, it's kind of like you have this, you're trying to tend to this garden. This is the example I give in letting go, right? You're trying to change your thoughts. You're trying to reframe things. You're trying to see it from other people's perspective. You're trying to meditate, trying to practice mindfulness. You're letting go of your thoughts. You're changing your body language, right? You're doing the Tony Robbins thing. You're pounding on your chest and all that. All good. But the problem is this garden where you're doing all of this, trying to plant flowers, remove the weeds of thought. Underneath is a toxic landfill. So you're trying to build this great garden on a toxic landfill. And you need to find a way to let go, empty out that toxic landfill, to let go of those emotions. So the difference between pushing out emotions, as Patrick asked, and letting them go, pushing out would be expressing them. So this is why using negative emotion can be dangerous, because we all know angry people. Donald Duck, for instance, our good friend, who's angry all the time, and he's never not angry. Or we all know weepy people. We know Eeyores, right? Like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, constantly sad all the time. You could say, pushing out his sadness, expressing his sadness, letting his sadness flow. Donald Duck letting his anger flow. And they never run out of anger. They never run out of sadness, because letting go of emotion and expressing emotion is not the same. So when we're using the killer instinct and we're sipping this emotion, this negative emotion, we have to be very careful, because we're kind of expressing the emotion. And that expression of emotion can also block out deeper emotions, right? So we have to use it very sparingly. Okay, we have to use it very sparingly to start to deal with some of these people who have, who give us, they activate. Really what haters are doing, if we get technical, is they're activating things that are already within us to a large extent. Now, there's some generation of new emotion when a hater says something, but if you pay attention and you're honest, when a hater says something, very often it's something you already were worried about yourself. Like there's something in it that's true about you. So the emotion they trigger actually is a trigger to let some of that toxic landfill emotion out, because that toxic landfill under the garden, it's waiting for a hole where it can like spring out, right? Like it wants to come out. So, and like, cover everything with toxic ooze. So haters actually very often are just not creating emotion, though they do create some new emotion. They're actually just activating or allowing to release or come up or be expressed some emotions already within us. The fear and anger, the doubts we have, the inner haters' doubts. So really, really great insight. Yeah, we have to let it flow in a way. And we can let it flow in two ways. The first flow is letting it go. The second flow is using it, expressing it a little bit, just a little bit. So really good. That's my understanding of it anyways. That's how I've always used it. So really, really great questions. These are great questions, by the way.
Thank
Fantastic.
you. And just then the other thing, I think you've heard most of what I was gonna whatever else to ask. But the other thing is, you did have that one of the earlier slides where you talked about the different types of haters. And so I just wanted to ask, do we tweak some of what you said depending on the type of hater. And I say that because I think like much of the discussion has been like to haters who were just like outright naysayers spoken, where something that they said jarred us in a way or whatever, However, I'm talking, what about, well, you did mention in the slide, what about those passive aggressive ones who is they're not just directly like, but it's in their tone, it's in that look, that sneer.
Yep. Body language. Yeah.
or,
Yep.
or off remark that's not directly that, but it's, well, that's common sense.
Right. So some haters are unintentional haters, right? Like you kind of are collateral damage to them. It's just their worldview is haterish. It's kind of like my dream killer family member. It's just his worldview. Like it's how he views everything, So yeah, so what I would do is like pretend it's intentional, quite frankly, like because that gives you a little more access to the energy. And I get that from athletes, right? Like Michael Jordan's a great example. Somebody would make a comment, they weren't even trying to be rude or hate, but Jordan took it that way. He decided to because he knew he needed that 1 to 3% of extra energy to intensify focus, right? So if somebody's unintentionally doing like a family member or like even a grandparent, just kind of makes an offhanded remark about how something you're trying to do is impossible, and they really don't mean anything by it. I would actually, if we're using the killer instinct, you can pretend they do. Now, this doesn't mean you start beefing with your grandmother, of course. You treat her the same, but in your head, I'll give you actually, I just remember this. Here's a good example. When I was like 15, I was a pretty good basketball player, right? I was being recruited by colleges and everything. And, but during the summer, I'd go play golf with my grandfather and my father, just go out. My parents got split up. So every summer I'd go to Ohio and, hang out with them for a few weeks because we lived in different states and very close to my grandparents, my father and everything. But like we're playing golf and I suck. I am so bad at golf at like 14, 15 years old. I play once a year. We play like twice. But, I'm an athlete. We played football. We played all these sports and we were pretty good at all of them. But, my grandfather, who was a good golfer and a good athlete himself, I'm like, every shot I hit's going directly right. Like I just can't hit a golf ball to save my life. And my grandfather said, "Oh, golf just isn't your sport." And he meant nothing by it. He really didn't. But it pissed me off, and I still remember it. And that gave me, I was like, I'm going to get good at golf one day. I remembered that. So I used my grandfather, who wasn't trying to be mean. I rest in peace, Grandpa. But I used that comment he made to make myself into a pretty good golfer today. I still think about that, right? So Grandpa was hating on me, and I used that energy. But it's delusional. Nobody'd be happier than him if I succeeded in golf, right? So he'd love to see me excel in golf. So great question. Yeah. So I kind of treat it differently, right? Like I don't treat them differently. I just pretend they're all the same. Everybody's out to get me. In the original Killer Instinct program, I talk about how killers have this like paranoid tendencies. If you go through a list of the things that paranoid people feel, like actually paranoid people, people with killer instinct have versions of that in diluted form. So, for instance, if you're actually a paranoid person, you always feel like you're surrounded. You feel like people are out to get you, right? There are eyes on you all the time, people wanting you to fail. And people with killer instinct like have that in a very diluted form. It's like, yeah, everybody's against me. Let's see if I can still do it. Kind of like in a movie. It's all they want that cinematic feel to their life. Like, yeah, these people think I can't do it. This is awesome. I'm going, like one guy, the 300 against the whole Persian army, right? Like, well, they ended up losing. That's maybe not a good example, but they fought. Okay, so there's some questions in chat. Patrick wrote directly, I didn't get the letting go definition. Letting go is allowing the emotion to come up and you actually don't react to the emotion. So you let a lot of the emotion come up and you don't act it out in any way. The best way to learn is actually to go do the program because it's like 6 hours long. And there's a lot of other videos there too. But the difference is, I would say pushing out the emotion would be, let's say you feel angry and you scream. That would be pushing out the emotion, expressing the emotion. Letting go of the emotion would be, you're feeling the same emotion, but if I looked at your face, I couldn't tell you were feeling that emotion. And there's a reason we do that. It's almost like you're the witness of the emotion at the same time you're feeling it. It's like two things going on at once. But if you're feeling supremely angry, you're feeling all of that anger and its degrees and all the associated emotions, but you're not expressing it. That's the difference. I hope that makes sense. But the full program will give you deeper insight. Tyra writes, can writing your feelings out be a way of letting go of emotions? Yes, sort of. Let me find a video right now. I'll paste it in chat. I just posted something on this. So what I do every morning is I release my emotions by writing, but it's not journaling, okay, at all. It's okay, here it is. Let me I'm grabbing this, putting it in chat for you. So this is how I do it every morning. And Patrick, this might help you too. The writing aspect of it, like how I actually do it every morning, right? And it shows you how I feel the emotions, but the typing isn't the same as, there's two things. It's not the same as journaling, and it's way more intense. It's way more honest, like super honest. Because if when you're dealing with these emotions, you're going into the unconscious. And I can't express to you how dark the unconscious can be. I spent 3 or 4 years doing kind of a Jungian deep dive into the unconscious. And it's more vicious than you can possibly imagine. Like if you get in touch with the emotions in the unconscious and you have a problem like with a boss, I think as Ava was saying, right? You have a problem with your boss, like he's a real a-hole or she's a real a-hole. The unconscious will want to get physical with that person. I mean, you go into that and the unconscious has a vision, maybe not of murder, but there can be murder in the unconscious, right? That's how it deals with things. If you're an animal on the Serengeti, your best solution, if you can't completely run away and disappear, is to slaughter the thing, and that problem goes away. The mafia essentially is like, that's how they handle problems. They let the unconscious say, here's a problem, kill the problem, like literally obliterate, disappear the problem. Okay. This can be in your unconscious. As you write, you might realize, yeah, I have visions of grabbing the back of my boss's head and slamming it into the stapler. Like this is how the unconscious thinks. And if you don't know about the unconscious, you think there's something wrong with you for having that much anger inside of you. But when you start to understand the unconscious, it's a problem solving machine, and it has no morality, right? So its solution is obliteration. Its solution, if it can't obliterate, if it's too powerful, it would be like disappear and end up on the other side of the world, if possible, like just vanish like a ghost. Or, as we talked about, it might just curl up in a fetal position and like hopefully God or some other more powerful person who can fight this person for me shows up. So that's the unconscious. That's what it does. It's just more extreme. So if you're writing out the emotions and you're just saying, I'm really mad at my boss. I can't believe my boss did this. And, I feel angry and I feel hurt. That's journaling. You're not going to let go of the emotion. So that video hopefully will help. Great question. Yes, the recording will be available. I'll put it, again, it'll be here. I'm going to send a message to everybody after this. I'll put it all up. Recordings. It'll be at that link there. Great question, Tyra. Nicole asks, when you have those you care about who are close to you, who see the world through a negative lens that comes out of their mouth, like that's just the way they are, what tools do you use to stop hoping their lens turns more positive or optimistic? So most people don't change. You hear people say people don't change. Most people don't change. Okay. So you have to acknowledge that people do change. I'm sure all of you have evolved in some ways, right? Maybe regressed in some ways. I know I have. But most people, unless they're interested in things like letting go, if they're interested in self-help, they're not going to alter. So the good news is they're a constant source of energy for you, hater energy, right? They're always there. You can kind of, what I sometimes do is I look at them literally like cartoon characters. You know how certain cartoon characters never evolve. That's what it means to be a cartoon character. You're basically the same character you always are, right? That's we watch them and they're archetypes and they stay in that archetype. And you start to find them sort of humorous. Like I have really angry friends, right? who are mad about anything and everything. They're always bitching and moaning. And I look at them like Donald Duck. Like literally sometimes I'll look at them like, oh, I see the little orange beak come out, right? And I have sad friends and I see them grow their little tail and they're gray and they walk around like Eeyore. Or I see, characters in my life who are anxious and always worried, like worried all the time. So I'll see them as like little worried cats, like they're like a cat or something. So then it kind of makes it humorous, and I know what to expect going in. And you have to remember, everybody's at their own level of evolution. Like personally, this is just a personal belief, I tend to believe in reincarnation and karma, right? So like maybe somebody was too passive in their last life and got walked all over. So this life they have to come back and be kind of jerks and prideful, right? Like they need to compensate for that. So you start to look at people as characters. My mother's really good at this. She almost walks through life like she's in a a book, and the people she meets are just characters. So she very often, not always, but I'd say 99% of the time, if she goes to the grocery store and there's just like a rude cashier or something, she kind of laughs about it because she sees it as like she's in a movie and that character had to be there for her as kind of comic relief because they're mad about nothing, right? So she sees it as a comedy. Or like the family member who is always bitching, like our dream killer. So we call him the dream killer. That's just who he is, and we expect that out of him as a character. So then you see them as these fictional characters, and then you go, in your personal life, you're just happy-go-lucky and positive. So that's how I typically handle it. Or you use their hater juice and sip on it. Like it's constant hater juice. Great question, Nicole. Patrick wrote, sorry to keep coming back to this, but not expressing the emotion, is that not the same as internalizing it? No, because you're feeling all of the emotion when you let go. So for instance, if I think about something that could upset me, let's say geopolitics, the war in Ukraine and Russia. Let's say I feel really angry about that. Okay. Like super angry. Right now, I can start to feel that anger. I'm feeling it fully. In my mind, there are going to be associated images and maybe news stories that come up about it. So as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling that right now, like literally. Okay. I'm feeling that anger, I'm feeling the rage even more intensely, the unfairness of war, the hopelessness, right? I'm feeling all of that as I'm talking to you. You don't know I'm feeling that, but I'm not internalizing it. I'm allowing it to come up. Internalizing would be the idea that you're going to hold on to that emotion. I'm doing the opposite. I'm letting it come up and evaporate. And the reason it starts to evaporate is because I'm not reacting to it. I'm not reacting to it. So the brain starts to learn that this negative emotion I feel, it can let it go. If you feel a negative emotion and you talk about it, you punch a wall because you're angry, what you're doing in the brain, in my opinion, is you're making that anger seem legitimate. And that's why angry people stay angry. When you talk about it, emotion wants you to activate muscles. That's what emotion, generally speaking, wants you to do. The muscles that are activated are the muscles of fighting, running away, or another way to think about muscle activation is deactivation. You curl up in a ball. Muscles also entail expression. You don't think about it, but the reason we can talk, show facial expressions, move our hands are all muscles. So when we use emotion and we move in any way that reinforces that negative emotion, if we're angry, we act angry, we move angry, it reinforces in the brain that we should hold on to this emotion. So what we do is we stay calm while we feel all of the emotion. You internalize the emotion by expressing the emotion, is what I'm saying, if that makes sense. But again, the best thing to do, like to go deeper into this, is I'm really not pushing this. It's again completely free. It's dillonfree.com. Just go to courses, or I don't even know what it says, and it's like how to let go. And you just put your email in, and you're in. I sent that directly to Patrick too. Cool. Okay, cool. You got it. Sweet. Yeah, check it out. It's just me talking, so like going deeper into the nature of emotion. And if you're not part of, I'll put this again, join this group too if you're not a part of it, because if you're into this like letting go of emotion, we do meetups there. I'll send that to everybody too. I accidentally just sent it to Patrick. Cool. Yeah, so letting go and using the killer instinct can work together. So there are like three ways you can approach life, I think. One is like your all killer instinct, which is what we're going to talk about mainly in this program, right? In this course when we do these lectures. The second is a mix. You're letting go and you're using the killer instinct. You're kind of coupling them. And I do this at times as well, right? The third way is just to let go, really, and kind of move away from using the negative emotion. You just don't want to use negative emotion. When you come to haters, you release all the emotion associated with the hate, and then you act out of love for what you do, and that's it. That's where as I get older, that's what I tried to move into, is I don't need the hater juice anymore, right? But I know it's an option. I can always go back to it and use it if I want. But generally speaking, I'm trying, if somebody doubts me, I let all the doubt go and I say, I'm just super excited about doing this. I don't care about the haters, right? I'm not blocking them out. I'm releasing on it. I don't care what they say. It's just, I love what I do. And that's why I'm doing it. So excitement for me is like, I'm going to make a program on excitement. I think it's one of the most powerful emotions, because I've been doing a lot of videos on this. If you let go of wanting and desiring and replace it with excitement, life is so much better, so much more peaceful. Because wanting and desiring, you don't notice it, but it's a negative emotion. It also has energy. You can use it, but it's still a negative emotion. Like, think about wanting something. It doesn't feel good. You got to get it. It's kind of subtle, but if you pay attention, you'll notice like desiring something doesn't feel great. But being excited about something feels fantastic. And when you're excited, I think it kind of tells the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, to like be on the lookout for things that could help you experience that excitement. It's like a little kid when a little kid sees something in a store window and just gets excited about it. The little kid doesn't even want it. Sometimes just gets excited and then goes on about his or her day. But a wise parent, or a parent who's paying attention, notices that the kid was excited about this thing and makes a mental note. I think the unconscious kind of does that. It's easier to for the unconscious to help you achieve what you want when you feel excited instead of wanting. Wanting can make you kind of freeze up in certain ways. If that makes sense. Cool. Yeah, this was a fun session. Really fun. Every time somebody puts a comment in, it like jumps. So like I'm scrolling just to see. Let's see if there's anything else. Hard to be mad if imagining the person as Daffy Duck talking. I think that's how some kids turn out there. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a method in neurolinguistic programming where you turn people into like cartoonish characters to get over a bad memory. You like retroactively go in and like, let's say somebody said something to you and like embarrassed you in front of a lot of people. You'll see them like sprout elephant ears and like a donkey face, and you scramble the memory. It can be very useful. But you can also do it in real time. If your boss is talking to you and you think he's a clown, see him look like a clown, right? He's playing that character right now. Really, really, really fun tool to use, actually. Go around looking at people. You know, sometimes I told this story before, but in some of my other talks, I was on the train once and some guy got on the train and he had like nachos or something, like something really loud. And he was sitting there and he on the train just like, and it was like chomp, chomp, chomp. And I'm trying to like write and I'm just getting pissed off, like so disgusting, so gross. And then I tried to reframe it, you know, and I said, this guy he probably just worked he was a construction worker or something. He just probably worked 9 hours and he's been thinking about those damn nachos for all day. He probably woke up thinking about them, couldn't wait to get off work, you know. Now he's on the way home and he's just, and that worked for about 10 seconds. I was like, you know, yeah, he's just a hungry guy. And then of course the emotion came back, right? Like, what a disgusting creep. And then what I did, which actually helped rather permanently, was I'm like, you know, if he was a dog, I would find it hilarious. You ever seen a dog go after its food and it's just like chomp, chomp, chomp? But because he's a human, I was holding him to a higher standard. So I looked at him as a dog chomping on his food, and then I kind of laughed. So yeah, it's very useful to to see people's cartoon characters and see yourself. My girlfriend and I, we broke up a few months ago. We're still really good friends, but what we would do if we were like bickering back and forth, we just, she's like, she would say, "I see you as a snapping turtle right now," or if she was getting sharp with me, I'd be like, "You're being a snapping turtle," those things are just like that, and we'd both laugh, and it would get over it. So yeah, that helps. Patrick had another question. It's jumping all over here. Blah, blah, blah. What do you do if a lot of these emotions occur unconsciously, as in they just completely flood you? Yeah, so the point of the unconscious emotion is you let it come up, and if you're a beginner releaser or letting goer, if you first start doing this, you think it's a bottomless pit. You think you're never going to like what if I go insane dealing with these emotions? What if they take me over? What if it ruins my mind? What if it ruins my psyche? What if it destroys me? And what you find out is that won't happen. There's a limited amount. But two, you start to see that every what if that comes up, you said, what do you do if, which is a what if question. It's just fear. So you go into the fear and there's just another emotion to release. What if this drives me crazy? No, really, what if this doesn't work for me? What if this guy Dillon is wrong? What if? Those are all just feelings. It's just fear expressed as a question. What if? So you go into the fear. What if? And then you get to a point. It's like, well, I guess I go crazy. So what? I go crazy. I guess I die. So I die. You get to a point where you go deep enough into the what ifs, you just go, okay, I guess that happens, right? I guess I end up in the crazy house in a straitjacket. Everybody makes fun of me. So what? You get to the point where you're just like, you've been through all the fear and you're like, no, okay, I'm homeless. I've lost my job. People make fun of me. I'm on the front page of the newspaper as a loser. So you go through the fear so much, you're just like, yeah, there's nothing you can do to me. So what? I'm in prison the rest of my life. I got 6 months to live. So big deal, because you've gone through the emotion. You actually find peace through it. So it's a process. When you first start doing this, that sounds impossible, but you actually get there pretty quickly if you keep releasing. Kind of a crazy method. It's really like, I've done it every day for 15 maybe more, a lot of years. And when I first started, the first 2 years or so, it was a lot of releasing. There was a lot of pent up emotion, but a lot of days, like I woke up this morning, I'm like, is there anything to release on? Nope. Like there's just nothing there. You're just happy. That's it. And then I release, and then I switch to excitement, and I think about what excites me for the day. Doing this talk was exciting. Before this talk, I had a meeting with one of a person I work with who's going through some. If I told you what he's going through, you would have more faith in the method. Trust me, it's one of the most horrific things a human being can go through, and getting over it because of the method. So I was excited about that. Then I'm going to go hit golf balls a little later in a simulator. Excited about that. Then I'm going to go to my gym and get in the hot tub and not work out. I'm just going to use the hot tub. I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about my going to Whole Foods. I'm on the carnivore diet. I'm going to get some sausage that I really like. So and then I'm working on a book, and I'm excited about that. So I release the negative, and then my whole day is planned around excitement. I don't want anything. I'm like, here's what I'll wrap up with this because we're getting close. But I'm looking for a new partner, and I noticed I was wanting a new partner, and then crazy thing is, I just said, let me let go of wanting, and said it'd just be exciting to have a new partner around. And as soon as I switched to excitement, suddenly I'm getting a lot of text messages from people, right? Like it's weird how that happens. So you become excited, and I told my friend about this excitement thing, like let go of wanting and embrace excitement. And he had thrown out his back, and he went to the gym, and he said, I let go of wanting my back to be better. I just got excited about it being better. He's like, I suddenly felt better. It's like my back relaxed and released. So I'm really focused. I think I'm really going to make a program dedicated to letting go of wanting. I kind of did a talk on it last month for the letting go workshop. But yeah, excitement is what I do. So I let go, and then I go into excitement. And excitement, I think, is part of the killer instinct. Like if you're ever around somebody who's one of these rare species or has the killer instinct, they are super excited about life. I mean, sometimes they're a little more muted. It can come in different ways. But most killers I know, it's like you talk to them, they got so many projects and they're just excited. And then I'm excited if none of it works out. Right? Like if everything fails, I don't find somebody, that's exciting too. So it's excitement within excitement within excitement. If I get the dream world, exciting. If I lose everything and I'm homeless, that's pretty exciting too, because I'm alive. And if I die tomorrow, that's exciting. And I end every session with, I can't wait for my family members and friends to die. I picture my mom and my dad in the casket. I go, that's awesome. That's exciting. I'm a little crazy. But the idea is like they get to go to the next world, and that is exciting. So I get extreme, but I really believe it. You know, I want them to live. I'm excited for them to live to 100, but I'm also excited for them to cross over. We should be excited if we have faith. And you know, if I was an atheist, I'd be excited that, hey, the suffering's over. They're in deep sleep, you know. Just excitement on excitement on excitement instead of worry and fear. You let go of the worry and fear and you just find excitement in everything. And what if that's the truth? Voltaire said, God is playing for an audience too scared to laugh. So, Patrick wrote, I've got depression. It's starting to crush me. Go do the letting go program. I think that'll help you. If you need to talk, send me an email. I feel the same about my parents. Yeah. It sounds callous to people who don't get it, but like, yeah, it's like crossover. But we also, you know, if you've ever been around somebody dying, what you end up telling them is like, it's okay to go. It's okay to let go, right? It's okay to leave this life. It's what we say to people. It's okay to give up the body. We can be excited about it. I'm not going to say when my parents die, I won't cry and be sad. Absolutely. But the bigger emotion is going to be excitement for them, right? I'll have a day or two where I think it's healthy to do that, to express that emotion. But I know that I'll have to let go of that emotion eventually, the sadness, and really try to feel the excitement for them. So you could do both. You know, you're still human. I allow myself to be human, right? I'm going to miss, if my parents, I'm going to miss those conversations. I'm allowed to miss those conversations. But the bigger emotion is that I'm supremely excited for them. Ava, we'll do this as the last question.
Yeah, it was not really a question. It's just sort of a funny comment with my twisted sense of humor. But as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, oh, I can't wait for my haters to die.
I'm going to have to steal that. I'm going to put that. I'm not even joking. I'm going to put that in the program next time I talk about that.
That's a twisted way of looking at it, but it might work.
Yeah, exactly. And they're assholes, so you can say reincarnate and try to be a nicer person.
Yeah. I can't wait for them to move on and all that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just a little stop in hell, not eternity, but maybe 5 minutes in hell. You know. Anyways, yeah. No.
I know. I'm actually wishing this for them in love.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because we're all assholes and haters in some way, right? Like, let's be real. So don't cast the first stone and all of that. But as you release, you do start to genuinely. The thing after I feel excitement for myself is actually, I'm making a video on this now, but I feel excitement for others, and part of it now is going to be feel excitement for my haters' deaths. But no, but like the goals I know my friends have, I feel excited for them, and I usually spend more time feeling excited for friends and family members than I do for myself. I never tell them, but I've noticed as I feel excited for them, they tend to get their goals more frequently. So it's kind of like visualizing for them or something. So after I feel excitement for myself, I'll feel excitement for them and what they want, and I see them succeeding, right? And it could be a friend made a passing comment about something they want, and I'll just feel excitement, and then I'll make a note of it in my notes, and then just see if in a week or two they don't get that thing, right? So I think there's something personally, this is my personal belief, metaphysical about it too. But yeah, let's all get excited about our hate. Maybe I should open with that next time. Today you're going to learn how to feel excited about your hater's death, Nicole wrote, I find letting go very helpful. I notice very often emotion underneath it all, whether it's anger or whatever, there's sadness. But I found there really is a level of sadness that I don't go below. Yeah, you can be absolutely terrified to go below that level of sadness because you think like it's you could get stuck there. And at the same time, whenever you're dealing with depression, you want to let go of the depression, and then you have to douse yourself in positivity and beauty, right? So the other angle to all of this, and excitement's part of doing that, right? But if you're depressed, you're having a hard time feeling excitement. So you can try, but then as you're letting go, feeling the sadness, feeling the worthless, feeling the tiredness, the fatigue, like really feeling it thoroughly. Like, what if I'm stuck here? What if this is who I am? You need to douse it with positivity, like comedies, music, beautiful music, right? Like you don't understand just how much you have to douse yourself. It takes so much. It's like suction to pull somebody out of depression, but you can get out of it. And it's like once you pop out and life becomes brighter again and life becomes happier again. But it takes some work if you're really depressed, and you may need pharmaceuticals. Like, I'm not against that. I'm a pragmatist. Okay. You may need to change your diet. You may need to start exercising. When you have something like severe, you have to attack it from every angle. And I should wrap up with this. As always, if what I say doesn't work for you, don't use it too, right? Like, I think it's kind of a human law that if you let go of emotion, you will get better because we're emotional beings. At root, I think we're emotional. We're feeling creatures more than thinking. We're feeling. Feeling came before thought for sure in our evolution. So I think if you learn how to let go of emotions, it can really help. But listen, I don't know. I haven't tried it on everybody in the world. Maybe it doesn't work for some people, but I think it does. I think it works all the way, but it can be very intense at times. So I think that thank you all for coming. I hope this was enjoyable, and I hope you'll come to the next one. I don't know what the topic's going to be, but I'll post it soon. Something along the killer instinct. But I think, quite frankly, when we talk about the killer, I'm always going to incorporate letting go principles because it's my main focus. Right? I started the Letting Go Institute, so that's my main focus. So we'll always touch upon letting go. But here we're talking about how to letting go really comes down to letting go of all the negative emotions. Killer instincts, like, okay, can we use some of those negative emotions against sipping it? That's kind of the killer instinct program there. And also we'll talk more about like conscious things you can do, like changing your thoughts and all of that. I'm going to try to do once a month. So I'm going to do once a month with letting go and once a month with the Killer Instinct Society. So if you're interested in the letting go, go join that. Again, this is the link for the letting go group. Yeah, and we have anywhere from like 100 to 600 people that show up to those. So those meetings have been getting pretty big. But you know, I noticed in January they were the biggest when people were setting New Year's resolutions. So they're getting smaller as the year goes on. But yeah, that's a good group. And then if anybody's New York City area, I would love to do some in-person stuff as well. I usually rent out a room. And I will say this, not this time, but going forward, it's 100% voluntary. It's going to be an option for a $10 donation. And that money will go to, I don't know what charity, maybe like, what's the children's hospital one? I'm drawing a blank, but something like that, maybe like cancer research or something. All of the money will go there, and I'll post proof that it actually went there too. So going forward, we'll have like a donation link, again, completely 1000% optional, and all of the money will go to charity. I'm not taking any of it, and I'm going to do it in the Letting Go group too. Again, totally optional. But we had 700 people in one of the talks, and I thought, man, if everybody gave $10 or so, or whatever they wanted, we could have donated like $7,000 to a great organization. And so I'm going to start asking to do that in these meetings. But again, I will not be taking any money from the donations. They will all go to charity. Maybe I'll put the link directly to the charity there. But what I'd like to do is collect the money and then give it in our name to the charity. I think that would be cool. Like the Letting Go group or the Killer Instinct group, maybe Killer Instinct and cancer charity would not be a good, but we can give it somewhere. Imagine presenting a huge check for 10 grand from Children's Cancer Ward and it says Killer Instinct Society. Like, maybe we don't want to do that there, but anyways, so I'd like to do that, collect the money and then give it to groups. And I will post proof that all of the money, not some of it, all of it went to charity. All right. Everybody have a great day. Have a great Sunday. And I'll post soon the next meetup. I'll post, again, the recordings will be here. And if you're into letting go, I post the letting go meetings there as well, dillonfree.com/recordings. Talk to everyone soon. Thank you so much for coming. Bye, everybody. Let me stop the recording.